Welcome back and good morning once again. If you're just joining us, this is still Daybreak Africa. Like Ezekiel and I said earlier, we'll be discussing the military takeover in Gabon. And to do that, we have Sam Olorunfemi, who's a political analyst in the house. Good morning and welcome to Daybreak
Good morning,
Africa.
Fatima, and good morning, Ezekiel. Thanks for having me once again.
Yes, it's always a pleasure. You know, recently, a lot has been happening in Africa.
Yes.
First, it was Niger. Now we could see it happening in Gabon. Would you agree that this is a revolution we as an African nation, this is the revolution we need coming to light?
Well, Fatima, I would like to distance myself from that thought.
Okay.
Whether this is a revolution we need to reposition democratic system of government in Africa. You know, you and I know that whether we like it or not, military is not the best option. Whether if we are talking about having a good democratic system of government, whereby citizens will be able to hold their leaders accountable, we all know that military formation is not the best option, because we are talking about military formation and democratic system of government. Even though people are still talking about, are we truly enjoying the dividend of democracy in Africa? You know what civilian government stands for, I know what military government stands for. You know, military, they operate under decree, whether you like it or not. You know, they have the final say. They don't seek people's opinion. When they decree something, you dare not question the authority. But when it comes to democratic system of government, when you decree, there's still bound for people to protest, there's not people to ventilate their opinion in your government. And when you look at the trajectory from 1990 across African continent, you see that we've been enjoying democratic system of government and so on and so forth. But the recent happenings in Africa, Fatima, is worrisome. And I think it is sending signal to other African countries that leaders need to sit right. You see, something we can deduce for what has happened, especially in Niger and Gabon, when you see military taking over power and you see their citizens jubilating, just going around the street as if the Messiah have come. You see, it calls for serious attention in Africa. Don't forget, West Africa now is on about 4 countries in West Africa, talking about Guinea, Mali, Sudan, and Niger. You see now, even Burkina Faso, they are under military junta. What about the Central Africa, the one that recently happened, Gabon, under military junta? You see now. So to me, I would say this revolution we are calling about. Rather, I will say this is a clear indication that democratic system of government in these countries and other countries that we are eyeing has failed and has collapsed. No government in this country, they failed their citizens, whether you like it or not. Now, talking about the recent happening now, that is Gabon. When you look at Gabon, and something that is very common in these countries now that military junta have taken place, we're talking about tenure elongation. Recently, I was talking about the Niger coup, what African leaders, especially the ECOWAS, needs to do. You know, Gabon is not part of ECOWAS. No, Nigeria has nothing to do, but Gabon is still part of African Union. So when I was granting an interview to KAFTAN television, I was talking about what we need to do, what our leaders in Africa needs to do to restructure and to return true democratic system of government in place. Now, you will see that when you have a particular family in government, let's take Gabon for instance now. You know, the father was there for some years. Now, son took over in 2009. He got re-elected again, and that election was characterized by people there being characterized by irregularities. Now, when I was trying to study Gabon, I studied their constitution, Fatima, and when you see that constitution just like ours, when you go to section 1 of the Nigerian 1999 constitution, it says clearly that the one way anybody can take over power in Nigeria is through the provision of the Nigerian constitution. And what the law says, that if you want to take power, you have to come through democratic system of government in such a way that you go and conduct it, you participate in an electionary process. Then if INEC saddle with the responsibility to conduct election and to announce election, declares you winner, then automatically you take over power. So our constitution doesn't give room for military to come in and to intervene. Likewise, the constitution of Gabon, God, I took time to study that constitution. Their constitution doesn't give room for military intervention. And when I was listening to international TV, I was listening to the spokesperson to the opposition leader. You know, election recently took place in Gabon now. So I was listening to the spokesperson to the opposition leader and was talking about that military should vacate power in Gabon. That there's no space in Gabonese constitution that gives room for military to come over. Now, again, when you look at the ousted Gabonese president, he did something that's not quite all right to me. Now, when you look at their constitution as well, you know, their constitution before it talks about when you want to conduct national election, you have to conduct presidential election. Then later you conduct their National Assembly election. Now, the National Assembly they are trying to change the constitution that by the time they are conducting presidential election, let it go simultaneously with the National Assembly election, just like we have it in Nigeria. You know, in Nigeria now, we are conducting general election is of two phases. Phase one will be presidential election, go simultaneously with the National Assembly, that is the Senate and House of Reps. The second phase will be for governorship election, the same thing with the State House of Assemblies election. So what the outside president did that was try to restructure the process, amend the constitution that things should not be like that. So there's a problem in Gabon, and people talk about lack of true reflection of democracy in Gabon, and that has been the noise. And people are saying that you can't be there forever. Your father was there for so many years. Now you took over in 2009 and you spent 2 times in office, and now you want to recontest again. So it does like some leaders in Africa, they are pushing their citizens to war, and that is what military are leveraging on, Fatima, because I've took time to listen to all these military leaders who have taken over powers in Burkina Faso, in Mali, in Sudan, in Chad, in Niger, and so on and so forth. No, recently we are talking about 7 African countries now that are under military junta, 4 in our West Africa here, and they all saying the same thing due to corruption, bad leadership, and so on and so forth. Another question that we need to talk about, Fatima, is that why is that all these are happening in Francophone countries? You understand? Because if you take your time to look at where all these military that have taken place, they are all,
like you said,
all in Francophone
that
countries.
question is actually a question I've been looking forward to ask. But
yes,
just before we jump into that topic, I was wondering. For me, I was concerned as to the level of celebration dished out by the Nigerians and the Gabonese.
Yes.
Now, like you said, a military takeover is not exactly the best option in every or any setting.
Exactly.
But in this situation where citizens are really celebrating that takeover, more like the coming of Christ or the birth of Christ, as we do as Christians and all that. The fact where they're actually celebrating it, is it more like is it giving the aura of citizens taking back their country? Is that what we're actually looking at? More like a liberation and not maybe a revolution in your words?
Oh yes, Ezekiel, let me just give a simple analogy of what we've seen from Nigerians and Gabonese jubilating after me taking over. You know, there's a saying that when maybe when the best is not available, the available will now become the best. You see now, maybe you are looking for something and you don't see it. The one you see now, you make use of it. I think they are jubilating because, and it shows that the outside leaders, maybe in Niger and in Gabon, it shows that they failed their people. But very soon, I know this citizen will come to realization that military in power is not the best form of government. You see now, whether we like it or not, and we've been clamoring, we'll be saying that. But because Ezekiel, you will get to a time when you fed up a particular thing. You get to a particular time when that thing is no more working, or you see an option. Whether the option is not the best, at that moment you will celebrate that, oh, the one I fed up is no more available now. The one available, you mix of it. But to me, that is not the best, and it shows, and it's sending signals to other leaders in Africa. You know, recently when this Gabon coup took over, you saw what happened in Rwanda. Paul Kagame reshuffling his military formation. You saw what happened in Cameroon by Paul Biya also reshuffling his military formation. And I said something on social media this morning that these two presidents, Cameroonian president and Rwanda president, that they've also sent out a signal that these two will be ruling democratism of government, because when that happened, why do they quickly reshuffle their military formation? So it shows that they've sat down and discovered that no, what led to the ousted of these two or about 7 presidents in Africa, it's like we are doing the same thing. So what we need to do, let's reshuffle the military formation in such a way that we put our own loyalists there. So whether we are doing something wrong or right, they won't see any reason to take over power. And again, I read and I discovered that the military head in Gabon happens to be a cousin to the ousted president.
Yeah.
So that what we are saying is that this is 21st century. It is not right for you to see a leader. And another question I raise is that in all these countries that military have taken over, does it mean that these countries are better off than other African countries who have a constitution for their president and their governors time to spend in office? Look at Cameroon. Can you be telling me that Cameroon is better off than Nigeria? Someone who has been there for decades. Now look at the EU of Gabon. What's their population? Around 2.5 million population. What is their poverty rate? 33.4%. So nothing is happening positively in all these countries that their leaders have been there for years. I didn't been in all these countries that the number of years their leader has spent in office has been the number of development. And that then people will see reason to extend the tenure of their president in office, because we have something to point out that look at Gabon, look at Cameroon, look at Mali, look at Niger. Their president, they've spent so many years in office, and look at the development. But yet you've been there for so many years, for decades, no development in your countries. So that is the problem. And I think at this moment, Ezekiel, African leaders need to sit very well, because I was live on the radio over the weekend, and I was like, if these people are doing African Union meeting, they are talking to themselves. What is happening that the African Union leaders cannot talk truth? Look at this president who has spent years in office. Talk true to them that this is not the best way to practice democracy in Africa. So what is failing now is the true democratic system of government, because people are waking up to their consciousness. And let's give kudos to Anglophone countries like Nigeria and Ghana. I was telling someone that in Nigeria, Ezekiel, if you are a president, tie road from Abuja down to all citizens' house. After 8 years, Ezekiel, you are leaving office. No matter your performance in office, if it's 100 years, provide jobs for all unemployed Nigerians. Ezekiel, after 80 years, you will leave office. We were in this country when a sitting president who has all the government paraphernalia to obtain an election, that was Goodluck Jonathan, and at the end of the day, he was defeated, and he considered defeat. So that's what democracy is talking about. And look at what played out. When Baba Passenger was about leaving, he tried to amend, even though Baba has come out to say that no, it was him, that some people was the one pushing him to amend the constitution. No, we're hearing that Baba wanted to amend the constitution just to have tenure elongation in office, 3 years in office. Three times? What did they see? It did not work out. So that is what we are talking about. All these countries that military have taken over, they failed their citizens. How will you be here for years?
Now, at this point, we have 7 countries under military coup. I doubt if it's going to be an end point for now. It's more like, I'm not sure it's going to be an ending sequence for now. But it gets me wondering, is it that Africans don't know exactly how to run democracy? Is our leadership having an issue? What exactly is going wrong with our democratic system of governance in Africa?
Ezekiel, it's all about leadership EU. That's just the simple truth. We've seen other countries, even in Africa here. We have some countries in Africa that other countries can learn from. You can learn from Nigeria. You can learn from Ghana. So it's just a leadership problem. If not a leadership problem, Ezekiel, why would someone believe that it can be there forever and never? You know, when this military coup happened in Gabon, I was listening to the outside president when he granted a short clip and sent it on the media. I know he was crying, telling people to come to his aid. And before this coup, you know, he was granted an interview talking about that he doesn't believe a limit to presidential tenure in office. Look at that. Is that not a leadership problem? If someone is in seat of power talking that he doesn't believe in a time limit, for whoever has been on the seat of president. So it's just a leadership problem. And if not a leadership problem, people will not see reason jubilating, going to the street, hailing the military who have taken over the power.
That brings me to my very next question. Now, you talk about persons actually jubilating. You talk about the thing is, we already have 4 West African countries already under this
military junta.
Military junta thing. Sam, are we seeing an end to this exactly anytime soon? Now, because the truth is, the military takeover actually come on the basis of maybe insecurity, or they come on the basis of corruption, which is not far from the truth. In recent, I mean, we could see security in such nation, we could see the level of corruption in such nation. So, with this, is this military takeover actually justified?
To me, Ezekiel, is not. Because I will always say that military formation or military taking over power is not the best option, whether I will like it or not. And to me, it is high time we sit and we talk to ourselves. Recently, I discovered that, when people were talking about military coup in Francophone countries, I discovered what really happened. That all this that happened has taken place in Francophone country. Now, I want to set an example of in Niger and Gabon. Now, recently, I was also watching international TV, and Gabonese was trying to send a message to France that France will come and evacuate all their 1,500 soldiers from Niger. Now, President Macron has been accused by Nigerians that is the one still taking their resources. Now, how will you justify this, Ezekiel? You have a sovereignty country who have been given independence now, and you still their colonial masters still coming to exploit their resources, still taking their resources out there. At the end of the day, we give them some passes. That's what happened in Niger before the military taking over power, because we discovered that France is still taking their resources off their land down to France. And at the end of the day, they will give them a peanut. And again, we discovered that in all these Francophone countries that military have taken over, we discovered that anytime they want to train their military personnel, they need to go over to France and train them. Anything they want to buy, they need to buy from France. So where's now the independence? And I was telling someone recently that when the British, when they grant us our independence, when Baba Awolowo and others, when they went there to negotiate, it got to a point that they were telling Nigerians, they were telling our delegates, our forefathers, that they will give us independence, but all the mineral resources in Nigeria under the ground will still belong to them. And Awolowo was like, no, that one will not work again. After granting us independence, allow us to have total control, whether mineral resources under the ground or on the ground anywhere. Allow us to have the control over it. So that's exactly what is going on in Francophone countries. And I think people are coming now to realize that no, you can't grant us independence. We are a sovereignty nation, and yet you people are still coming back, taking our resources down to your country. More or less like you just granted us independence on paper. But to have our own independence, you don't give us. And I got to understand that one of these countries now, even the president, Paul Biya of Cameroon, that is not even residing in the country, is in Switzerland. So anytime they want to do election, they bring him back to the country. After election, you just get out of the country. So we can't continue to see this in Africa. And you think people will not come back and revolt against their leaders? So that, to me now, it is just a leadership problem in Africa. Don't we have other African leaders that have their constitutional power? When the time comes, they leave office. Why that some people have decided not to leave office till they die? Let me give you a typical example. Have you forgotten what happened in Zimbabwe to Robert Mugabe? Have you forgotten what happened in Burundi, in Nkurunziza? Have you forgotten what happened in the Gambia under Yahya Jammeh? And so on and so forth. Have you forgotten what happened in Libya under Muammar Gaddafi? All these leaders, they don't want to leave power. It's just about leadership problem, and that's what we are saying in Nigeria. To get this right, to get this done, we need leaders who will give us a good and quality leadership process. It's just like, when you want to apply for a job, they ask you the years of experience. What do you have to table? But that one is not there in a political system.
At this point,
the moment you have the money, the moment you have the power, you go and you become a leader.
At this point, I'm actually expecting the French to step into this situation.
No, I listened to the French President Macron talking about that military should leave and should relinquish power with where they have taken over power in these Francophone countries. And people there, they are accusing French President Macron. Even in Niger, it's happening now. Protest is going on in Niger now. against the Nigerians and the military from France, that they should leave that they don't want to see them again. In fact, it got to a point that they burnt the flag of France. Like they don't want to hear them again. They don't want. In fact, they want to leave them. They want to live under France. So to me, we cannot be talking about coups that are taking place in Nigeria without talking about external interference. That is the problem, because people are not waking up to their consciousness that we are in the country, we can't take over our resources. Some people are still coming to exploit us after granting us independence. Is that supposed to be the formation? No. And that's why I said that African Union need to see it. And that's the problem with African unions. We don't need to, it's like in Africa, we like fire brigade approach. We allow something to happen before we start running etasketa, holding summit, here and there. So African leaders, they ought to have just looked into this EU, especially in Africa. It's becoming too much Ezekiel in Africa. Some leaders will be there for long years without leaving power. Muammar Gaddafi was killed in Libya. Yahya Jammeh was outside out of office. Pierre Nkurunziza of Burundi was outside out of office. Is that the trend we want to be following in African countries? Especially all these francophone countries in Africa. That's not the best.
I really tend to wonder, why is it peculiar to the francophone countries?
That's why I'm saying that all countries under francophone countries, truly they've granted independence, but France is yet to leave them. France is still leveraging on their resources. Just for example, you know, we're granted independence by United Kingdom or UK, USA, now England. Now, let's assume that they are still the one exploiting our resources from Niger Delta. What would think will be the reaction? Since Nigeria will have said no, that's not supposed to be. We're a sovereignty nation. Section 1 of the Constitution is very clear. Nigeria is a sovereignty nation, and the power lies in the hands of the good people of Nigeria, not in the hands of our colonial master. So, not like recently now. Don't forget AU report. After 2023 general election, where AU report indicted INEC that the election conducted in 2023 was not fair, was marred with irregularity, and some Nigerians now vehemently oppose that this is Nigeria. You don't come here and interfere in our process. You can just come and observe the election. So you are not the one that will dictate to us. This is Nigeria. Don't forget, during the 8th Assembly under Senator David Mark, something happened in Nigeria. Then what did happen? We're talking about gay. That Nigeria should also legalize gay in this country. We said we vehemently rejected that. No, this is Nigeria. Truly, you granted us independence and so on and so forth. You can't be dictating for us what we do. We have our right to choose our leaders. We have our right to enact our law in an area where you see a country have their own constitution. It will be wrong for external interference. Or it would be wrong for external interference to become and exploiting their resources, looking at the abject poverty going on in that particular countries. Look at the poverty rate in all these countries we are talking about. How many people can boast in all these countries that no, this country, no, we can say level of development, we can say level of achievement? None. And their leaders have been there for so many years. So that is what we are saying. Let francophone country, let them leave all these countries that they've granted independence. Let them allow them to operate. Let them allow their leaders to face their citizens in such a way that you see a leader taking the resources out of the country. Resources that are supposed to use to develop your citizens, you take it to their master. So this is what people have seen in this country, that no, it is high time we support them. And that's why when you see all the military officers that are taking over, the same thing they are saying: corruption. Also, what's the corruption we are talking about? Taking their resources out of their country, taking to their masters, developing up there.
After the Niger coup, we had lots of Nigerians talking, and just after the Gabon coup, the talks tend to intensify. Basically on the basis of insecurity and corruption being the platform for these military takeovers. And with the thing is, Nigerians are not exactly far from insecurity. Exactly. Far from corruption per se. Exactly. And it begins to make one wonder: should we be careful? Should we be expecting the unexpected? Now, people will tend to say maybe the issue of tribe and all that might bring that instability. But I mean, anything could happen.
Ezekiel, you are right, because I've listened to a lot of analysts, international affairs analysts, say that we Nigeria should fancy our seat belt. In fact, recently I listened to Shifemi Falana SAN when he was talking at the summit organized by Nigerian Labour Congress, and he was talking about that what has happened in other countries should be a kind of signal in Nigeria that our leaders should sit right, give the people the true dividend of democracy, give us good leadership, and so on and so forth. But to me, Ezekiel, you know, I'm not a prophet, but when it comes to prediction, people say I'm a prophet. I don't see that happening in Nigeria. But I'm not saying complacency to set in. You understand now? You know, but I don't see that happening in Nigeria. Truly, we have constitution. Gabonese, they have constitution. Nigerians, they have constitution. But when you look at the structure of our constitution, Ezekiel, don't forget that the constitution we are using now was drafted in 1988 under Absalam Abubakar. It came to being in 1999. What does that mean? It shows that after military junta in Nigeria, all what is happening now, all what is happening now is not new to Nigeria. Don't forget in 1966 when we have our first military coup. We saw in 1983 when former President Muhammadu Buhari, then General Buhari, overthrew the government of Shagari. We saw how Babangida, we saw how Abacha, and so on and so forth. So it's not new. But this constitution we are using now, you know, it was drafted in 1988 and 1999 it came into being. Now, when you look at our constitution, it provides, like I said, I said in my introduction speech that no matter what you do as a president or as a governor, after 8 years, Ezekiel, you have to leave office. There's nothing like tenure elongation. And I cited example that will have made military to seize the opportunity to overtake power in Nigeria. We saw it when Baba Obasanjo was here, when he was trying to launch third-term agenda. That would have given opportunity for military coup to take over. But at the end of the day, what did we see? We saw that National Assembly vehemently rejected the third term. Now it's not operational in our constitution. Don't forget, under Goodluck Jonathan, some soldiers were arrested that they did not fight Boko Haram in Borno, that they ran back. At the end of the day, we got to know that those soldiers, when they were talking, they said that they were not equipped with sophisticated weapons to attack Boko Haram. That would have been another avenue for military junta to come in Nigeria. Now we've seen where our military men, they've been ambushed by Boko Haram, by bandits, killed. Recently, we saw what happened in Niger State when about 20-something military were ambushed, killed, and buried. That did not give room for me. That would have been another opportunity for military to take over power. That the democratic system of government we have there, they are not securing their people, the lapse of insecurity. We've seen a lot of corruption cases. Since 1999, we saw what Buhari said when he came to office, that he need to prove Obasanjo power project, the money given to Obasanjo for power, yet nothing happened. Now, when you look at something normally plays out in Nigeria, Ezekiel, people need to know that if Sam should become the president today, and even before me becoming the president, I will have had my people in military. And you see that this thing is very common in Nigeria. Anytime you see a new president in place, less than a year, there's going to be a shift and change in military formation. That's just our culture in Nigeria. You see, in fact, when Buhari came into office in 2015, he managed the service chiefs Jonathan used for less than a year. He changed everybody. And in fact, he used his own more than enough. That was people were calling it that Buhari should sack all the services that they spent more than normal time in office. What did we see when this president came on board in May 29 this year? You know, he allowed Lucky Rabo and others to spend some time in office. No, he had some meetings with them. What is it after? He moved all of them away. In fact, we got to know that some senior officers were automatically retired from us. What did they say? He came up with his own. We have Yoruba man for about 30-something years. We've never had Yoruba man becoming chief of army staff. Now we have it. We're talking about Lagbaja. What about Inspector General of Police? The last time that was under Obasanjo, Tafa Balogun, if you could remember very well. Since then, we never had a Yoruba man as Inspector General of Police. What do we have now? We have Egbeto Kunde, what of chief of army staff, and Hausa Igbo man. So we have restructure in the process. So it's so that by the time you come into office, you tend to come in with your own people who are loyal to you.
More like certain precautions.
who are loyal to you. So to me, I don't see that happening yet, but our leaders in this country need to sit tight. You know, so we should not allow compliance to say anything. And we must give the true dividend of them. It's like people are not asking too much. Give us power. Give us good rules. Give us water. give us access to education, give us all good things that will make life comfortable. Citizens are not asking too much again. So if our leaders can come to their consciousness and say that, let us do this for our people in such a way that it won't be during electionary campaign, you see people with people are contesting with mouth, with brilliant manifesto. When we get there, we will dig the ground, we give you gold and so on and so forth. By the time they get into office, you ask yourself what has happened. They tend to shift from the electionary campaign.
Thank
so our leaders in Nigeria sit tight, give people true dividend of because and AU must see to all this tenure elongation in power in Africa.
Once again, thank you for joining us on Daybreak Africa.
Thank you, Ezekiel and Fatimah, for having me.
All right, our viewers heard it all from Sam. He believes leadership structure in Nigeria needs to be restructured at some point so as to bring an end or a stop to this unending sequence of coup. Now, at this point, I'm handing you over to Lagos Studio. We will have so much more for you. I remain Ezekiel Ogar.
I am Fatimah Ibrahim. Bye.